In this video, we are going to explore a key question about the Korean War. What role did Mao Zedong really play? Did he know the war was coming before it started on June 25, 1950? And most importantly, did he actually want to get involved? The truth is more complicated than it seems. Was Mao manipulated by Stalin, or was he in control? Why did he decide to enter the war, even without the support of his ministers? Was it really about protecting China, like Chinese propaganda claims? By the end of this video, you will have answers to these questions. Stick with us as we uncover the truth behind his decisions. The first question is, did Mao know the war was coming before it started on June 25, 1950? Well, the answer is both yes and no. Yes, because before the invasion of North Korea, Mao completely supported Kim Il-sung's plan to unify Korea by force. Mao had promised that he would fully support Kim's invasion once he took Taiwan. In March 1949, as the Chinese communists were about to win the Civil War, Kim Il-sung became anxious and asked Stalin for help in invading South Korea. Stalin refused, worried it might spark a conflict with the United States, which would lead to World War III. Kim then turned to Beijing for help. Mao assured him that he would be ready for war once he had all of China under his control. Mao even suggested North Korea could launch a full-scale attack in the first half of 1950. Confident he would have China under control and he could then back North Korea. Mao even went as far as to say, if necessary, we can quietly send some Chinese troops to help you, because we look the same and the Americans won't be able to tell the difference. Mao wasn't merely offering empty words to Kim. Between July 1949 and April 1950, he sent 30,000 to 50,000 battle-hardened ethnic Korean troops who had fought alongside the Chinese communists in the Civil War back to North Korea, fully equipped. Kim then swiftly built his 150,000-strong invasion army around this experienced force. But here's the no. Mao was unaware of the exact timing or details of the invasion plans. Despite Kim's persistent requests, Stalin eventually agreed, but intentionally kept Mao in the dark. He prevented Kim from informing Mao, fearing it would increase Mao's influence. Before the war, all Soviet aid to North Korea was sent by tse to keep China from knowing about the preparations. On May 13, 1950, after all preparations were complete, Kim finally traveled to Beijing to inform Mao that Stalin had given him the green light. The message was clear: Stalin had the final say, and Kim believed he could win the war without Mao's help. Mao was furious, but didn't dare express his displeasure to Stalin, who held enough power to make Mao tremble. When the war began on June 25, 1950, it was especially humiliating for Mao to learn about it first from a foreign newspaper, with no official notice from Kim until 3 days later. In a sense, Mao was dragged into the war. The second question is, did Mao really want to fight the war? The answer is 100% yes. If Mao's earlier eagerness for war seemed like mere talk, his actions soon demonstrated his fervor to the point of making even Stalin deeply concerned. In July 1950, as the North Korean army advanced south, Mao repeatedly warned Moscow and Pyongyang to prepare for a possible US landing behind their lines. He even proposed secretly sending Chinese troops to defend the coast for Kim, but Stalin vetoed the plan once again. After MacArthur's successful landing at Incheon in September, Mao again pressed to send troops to defend the 38th parallel. Stalin rejected the request, instructing Kim to prepare for a retreat to China to establish a government in exile. It seems that he chose to abandon Kim. However, 2 weeks later, after the North Korean army was defeated and the UN forces crossed the 38th parallel, Stalin suddenly agreed to Chinese intervention. But why the change? It wasn't out of concern for Kim. Kim and Korea meant little to Stalin. One of the many reasons was that Stalin ultimately realized that China's involvement would benefit him in many ways. If China succeeded, it would be advantageous. If China failed, Mao would likely plead for Soviet intervention in Manchuria and the return of Port Arthur, a key naval port Stalin had reluctantly handed back to Mao in February 1950. Stalin also believed the Americans wouldn't risk a nuclear war. So in October 1st, he subtly suggested that it was time for Mao to send some divisions to Korea under the guise of a volunteer army. Thus, the Chinese People's Volunteer Army was born. Mao was excited but still needed to consult his comrades, even though it was just a formality since he was a de facto dictator and didn't need their permission to do anything. However, they could be useful as scapegoats if China lost the war. So he quickly called a Politburo meeting. As expected, most opposed sending troops, knowing the US dominated the skies and could even nuke China if they wanted. But Mao dismissed their appeals. He was resolute and pressed on with his decision. When Lin Biao, the original choice for commander of the volunteer army, vehemently opposed the war and pretended to be sick to dodge the rule, Mao appointed Peng Dehuai instead. Peng later remarked, "Volunteer army, there was no volunteering, even I was forced into it." You might wonder how one person could make such a significant decision and have others fully implement his radical ideas. The answer is very simple. This was, and still is, a communist totalitarian dictatorship with no checks and balances. Mao was a mix of a traditional Chinese emperor and a modern Stalinist, wielding immense unchecked power through a unique communist system. This allowed him to treat the entire country as if it were his toy. Here's the third question we have to answer. Why was Mao so eager for war? Several reasons, but let's focus on the two most important ones. First, Mao needed Stalin's trust and Soviet support. The Chinese Communist Party, CCP, had long relied on the Soviets for survival. From its founding in 1921, the CCP received significant financial, political, and military support from the Soviets. For a long time, the CCP was just a puppet of Stalin. With the help of the Soviets, the People's Republic of China was successfully established in 1949. However, the country faced economic collapse, international isolation, and ongoing hostility from the West. For Mao, Stalin was the only reliable ally, leading to the 1950 Sino-Soviet Treaty of Friendship, Alliance, and Mutual Assistance. But Mao knew Stalin didn't trust him and might see him as another Tito. Only through war could Mao secure Stalin's complete trust. Second, and most crucial, was Mao's ambition. Mao thrived in chaos and was combative and warlike throughout his entire life. He made extreme statements like, "World War III should be fought in China, the sooner the better. We have 600 million people. Even if half die in the war, we still have 300 million. Such remarks even left Khrushchev deeply frightened. Mao's ambition to lead the international communist movement was clear, and Stalin knew it. So he constantly tried to tame the unruly Mao. Stalin knew Mao's ultimate dream was to share the world with him, and once he was gone, Mao would become the leader of the communist world. As the red flags spread worldwide, Mao would become the ruler of the earth. Mao's ambition and unchecked power led to a series of huge man-made disasters like the Great Famine and the Cultural Revolution down the road. We will have other videos focusing on such topics. Before China entered the Korean War, Mao Zedong was particularly eager for Stalin to fulfill his promise of providing Soviet air support, while secretly ordering Peng Dehuai to assemble the volunteer army and move toward the border. Mao sent Stalin a seemingly contradictory telegram expressing doubts about sending Chinese troops. Stalin, however, understood Mao's true intentions. He was just bluffing and trying to pressure Stalin for more support at the last minute. Unmoved, Stalin reminded Mao that it was Mao who had repeatedly insisted on joining the war. Undeterred, Mao made one final attempt on October 10th by sending Zhou Enlai and Lin Biao to meet Stalin in person to request additional weapons. However, on October 8th, two American F-80 jets mistakenly attacked a Soviet airbase, which Stalin interpreted as a deliberate warning. In response, Stalin decided to reverse his decision and informed the Chinese that he would not send the Soviet Air Force. Stalin was a master of manipulation. He knew Mao was desperate for a war to prove himself. To Stalin, Korea wasn't worth risking a world war with the US, especially with his focus on Europe. However, Stalin knew this war was crucial for Mao's rise in the communist world. Mao needed it more than Stalin did. So, when Mao knew that he wouldn't get any Soviet support and threatened not to send troops, Stalin simply telegrammed, "Fine, you don't have to send troops. Kim Il-sung can set up a government in exile in China." Now, Mao found himself completely checkmated. After some thought, Mao told Zhou Enlai, "Whether the Soviet Air Force joins us or not, we will proceed." So, as planned, Chinese troops crossed the Yellow River on the 19th of October. In the end, China was pulled into the Korean War by Mao. It wasn't really China's war, it was Mao's war. A new chapter began and millions of lives would be changed forever. Stay tuned for the next video, where I will answer another question. Did China really win the Korean War? China's official narrative often highlights the Korean War as a great victory and a remarkable achievement by Mao. The strong friendship between China and North Korea is forged in blood. But is that the full story? Please give us a like and hit the subscribe button. See you next time.